Hello everyone, today we will present the Teva case. My name is Yi, this is Bart, and this is Kevin. So let's start with the company background. In 1901, Teva, which is a small wholesale drugs distribution and then the company grew, and then it's become the only supplier for the local markets as well as the country neighborhoods. And later on, its company expands its business from distribution to manufacturing. During this time, Eli Hurwitz, he joined the company and became the CEO, and after that, he has led the company for more than 30 years. Teva Pharmaceutical Industry (LTE) was formed by the merging of the three companies, Asia, Zori, and the Teva. In 1990, company went international, and under the leadership of Eli, the company strengthened its business by the acquisition in Canada, US, and Europe, and some subsidiary in Latin America and some other part of the world. So the company now is the largest generic pharmaceutical in the world.
Okay, next I want to go a little more into how Teva became the largest generics pharmaceutical company in the world. Like Nee said earlier, it was started in 1901, but it wasn't until the time of World War II that this companies truly began to grow. It was during this time that a lot of scientists and physicians and a lot of talent was fleeing Nazi Germany and Europe to go into British-mandated Israel, where these people set up small businesses, small drug manufacturing companies that would eventually be consolidated by Hurwitz, the CEO of Teva. Sorry. Yeah, I'll finish. It was during this time, when it started expanding, that they decided to focus on generic pharmaceuticals, which are bioequivalents of other brand name drugs. It's the same active ingredients. And in Israel, Teva became the largest pharmaceutical company after they acquired the second largest pharmaceutical company in Israel, Ika Pharm. Next, I want to go over how they succeeded in Israel in comparison to not just the competition in Israel, but as well and globally as well. Locally or domestically, they were ahead of their competition because they had a superior foundation and infrastructure. Teva was a consolidation of multiple drug manufacturers, so they had a better understanding of the industry. They had better supply chain management and scaling because they were much larger than the small mom and pop shops. This allowed them to price their drugs a lot lower, which helped them gain market share. And this is one of their biggest business strategies. It was Hurwitz's goal was to price everything as low as possible as to not lose market share with the competition. From a global standpoint, Teva was able to succeed through compulsory licensing. This meant that a lot of big brand name pharmaceuticals from overseas were unable to work directly with Israel, and the small pharmaceutical companies were able to threaten these companies by using this compulsory licensing, meaning they could manufacture these drugs that were patented otherwise. And another way for them to have a global advantage is when they eventually moved onto the U.S. market, they were able to lower the prices significantly compared to their competitors. They had a broader scope of products, and then they had superior inventory management and gave discounts for volume and bundles. Here, I have 2 points for how Teva set itself apart from the competitors. The first one is the most important one. It was their price-driven business model. Their CEO, Hurwitz, it was around the 1980s when he focused on this price-driven model where he would guarantee all his customers the lowest prices, even when he already created contracts with customers. If a competitor were to create another generic at a lower price, Hurwitz was willing to give his customers credit for future purchases in order to lower the price. He wanted to ensure that no competitor took any market share away from Teva so they could continue growing and stay dominant as one of the largest generics pharmaceutical company. And another way to lower prices was he focused markets. He started off in Israel and he built the foundation for Teva in Israel until he was the lowest priced pharmaceutical companies before he then entered the US market, which was the next largest market. It wasn't until they fully saturated the US and Israeli market that they continued further expansion into Europe and Asia. The next point would be their expansion across on an international scale. When they entered US, they partnered with a company called Grace, and that allowed them to build more infrastructure in the US. And these alliances helped them fight against the big brand names, these innovative firms such as Pfizer. Because during this time, there were a lot of authorized generics, which were generics made by these big brand pharmaceuticals at a lower price. Yes, and it was also during this time when they were expanding during the 1980s that Hurwitz transitioned to more of an innovative drug industry.
So there are 5 points that I found Teva is vulnerable going forward. The first one is generic market. So the competition in generic pharmaceutical markets is very intense as the price declines a lot due to the fact that the generic companies enter the market a lot, while the branded companies, they also strongly defend their branded products, as well as they license the generic version from the branded products of their company. So as you can see right here, the higher the number of the generic manufacturers, the lower the average relative price. Teva also should be careful with the patent infringement suits, because Teva continue to market the generic products of the branded company despite the litigation of those companies. So the adverse outcome may affect the company's revenues. So you can see right here, Teva in January 2017, Teva shares fell 10% after the court sided with Mylan, and the court cannot uphold Teva's patent infringement suits. Regarding consolidations, continuing consolidation can cause Teva experience the price pressure, as well as the Teva will face a lot of more challenge in the supply chain management and the company operation. And for the capitals, continue of consolidations, acquisition, R&D costs, and some other relating costs, such as the marketing and sales. It can make the company more vulnerable in terms of, for example, the financial crisis in the increase in indebtedness. So you can see right here, this is the Teva senior notes and debentures. So the company, the Teva's debt ballooned in 2016. One big problem is that the Teva acquired the activists in 2016. And last but not least is the generic and innovative products within the company. So as mentioned in the case, allocating the resource is challenging, and the R&D cost, project, and the workforce may not match between these products, so that may cause the company experience struggling in the company operation.
Thanks, Nee. So now just moving on to a comparison of biosimilars and generics. So what is a biosimilar? So there are biosimilar is heavy in weight, to give you a very layman example and an advantage, and generic is a very small size molecule. That's in milligrams and this is in kgs. You can do that. The two main differences between biosimilars and generics is that biosimilars are very expensive to develop versus generics are not. And the same thing that biosimilars take a longer time in the pipeline and they have a longer development time versus generics don't. So what happens is the next thing is it's like only the big companies produce generics, biosimilars, versus smaller companies go for generics. It's similar to Donald Trump does not care about money and a small company cares about how much money they earn. So now the market dynamics today is biologics was 150 billion in 2013 versus now it's 290 billion by 2020. Now, it's 50% of the revenue that is generated using biologics is only by 11 drugs, and most of them are expiring in 5 years, and this is known as a patent cliff. Now, the market share right now of total biologics is 12% versus, which is going to grow to 27% by 2020. And biosimilars, which is a subset of the biologic drugs, is 86 million in 2014 versus 35 billion in 2020. That's 60% growth annually. Now, when you come to generics, its generic was similar, 200 billion in 2016 was 300 billion in 20, but they're just growing at 10.5%, and versus 60% for biologics. And like 120 billion is lost in sales only by expirations of small molecules that are original drugs between 2009 and 2014. It's expected to be 215 billion by 2020. But still, generics is the biggest market. 92% of all prescriptions come through generic drugs, and 5 of the 10 best-selling drugs are still small molecules. Now, the opportunities that Teva have. Now, Teva is, as you can see, the 11 drugs which I just mentioned, some of them are on the left side. Now, Teva already has the ones in red, that is Rituxan and Herceptin. Now, the other ones are the opportunities they have. Humira is already captured by other companies. They're already there. But they can go for other ones like Remicade or Avastin, which has a huge, and everything is in $1 billion revenue. So they can take those markets in because it fits their portfolios as well. In terms of countries, USA is again the leaders in biologics and biosimilars and generics as well. But Europe and South Korea and India are also coming up. So the amount of biosimilars and generics which were approved last year or in the last couple of years is huge. So that can be a new market that Teva can get into and even expand more. Now, how does Teva survive against big pharma? This is a big question because generics is all about undercutting. So now this was a strategy which was developed by Pfizer in 2011 when it lost its major drug known as Lipitor. So it was known as product hopping. Now, product hopping is a strategy that if a generic guy wants to come into the 180-day buffer period, and it needs to have the same form of the drug, or tablet or a capsule, and also the same active ingredient. So what Pfizer did was it completely as soon as it came to patent expiration date, they completely changed the form of their drug. They changed a tablet to a capsule, so the generics had to again refile an ANDA, which is again an application you need to file to get FDA approval. And that is why they kept on product hopping. It is against antitrust law. But until you're caught, you're not proven guilty. Now, undercut generic prices. Now, big pharma companies don't care a lot about money, so they can still come up with drugs that undercut the generic prices and go even below. It's hard, but they can lose that. They have the capability of losing that money. Now, again, this was done by Pfizer, that they did special deals with health insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers. So they went to Aetna and said that if you sell our drugs, we'll give you some incentive of using our drug and giving people insurance on that. So they did that, and that gave them a lot of business, and they did not even have to undercut. And the pharmacy benefit managers, they went to hospitals and said that you keep these drugs in your pharmacy, and these are going to be used when somebody undergoes surgery, because there's nothing known as a ceiling price in America today. So that helped them a lot. And last is making biosimilars. Again, biosimilars need additional FDA approvals, and it's a longer time process. So companies like Pfizer or Novartis or Glaxo can do that because they have the money to do it, versus some company back in South Korea or India which does not have that money. They can only go for generics versus biosimilars. That's all we have. Thank you. Go on.
How do you think the patent exclusion is going to affect Teva in the future?
What do you mean by exclusion?
As in, after 15 years when the patent is gone, then everybody can compete against the same drug.
So,
That's what
if anyone wants to. Yeah.
But isn't that what generics are?
Yeah.
So they're able to produce generics because the patent is expired.
So there was a phase where it was from 2007 to 2009. There came a phase where most of the blockbuster drugs, which they call them, they label these drugs as blockbuster drugs. So when they get out of expiration, everyone wants to fight for it. Similarly, there were 3 other phases. But what Teva is doing is, if it has to go for the generic market. And again, Teva's always strategy was undercutting all the people. Now, if India cannot send drugs, China cannot send drugs to America or Europe because that's not allowed to a large extent. Only certain things are allowed. So if Teva wants to compete in this market, again, go to biosimilars, which are expensive to produce. No one in India can do that and still does not do it. And or else you need to undercut the competition or again product hopping.
Yeah, another thing you could do is, like I mentioned, the compulsory licensing.
Yes.
That allows countries outside of like the main manufacturing companies like the US, maybe they don't want to deal with selling this product to Israel. They can use this compulsory licensing as like a threat, saying like, oh, if you don't let us manufacture this, if you're not going to bring it here, we're just going to make it ourselves, and you're going to have to provide us, like, we're going to be able to infringe on your patents, like, and the government will be okay with that. So that's another way they can fight these patents.
In your slide, you said there are some new markets that improving, like EU, South Korea, or India. Should Teva, looking into expanding more into those territory, or just focus on the US market?
So, if they want to go for generics, India is the biggest generic market in the world today. Then the next, it's not there, but Australia is too, because by 2020, most of the patents in Australia are expiring too. So if they want to expand and because India is a big population, China is a huge population. So I understand they'll have less market share, but the amount of people they're catering to are large as well. Now, being an Indian, being an Indian, we usually care about brand. We don't care about, our doctors care about brand rather than giving generics. So the people still produce it, but the people acceptance is low. So I think expanding in these regions would be helpful because people are brand conscious as well over there.
Okay. I kind of agree with India, but I have a few questions on like the China or Southeast Asia where the Eastern medicines or the healing techniques are more popular over there. Do you think it is a good idea for them to come into those countries?
Because I don't know if you guys want to answer that.
Oh, I know I guess for China, I know that their like patent laws and like copyright is like very lax. So it might actually hurt Teva to go into that market in China because you'll have all these companies that might not need to follow all these protocols like Teva does, which is like an international market.
For me, I believe that if China, because medicine or this industry is a $1 trillion industry, one of the richest industries in the world. So if the industry wants to grow, if China wants to grow on this industry as well, they need to have those laws placed in. Now, I understand that they follow conventional medicine, but if there are so many biosimilars which are being approved, somebody's fighting for that. So when there's approval, that means that industry is growing at a rapid rate. So I feel that is what a speculation I use, because if there are 17 already in the pipeline for approval, that means that the industry is growing very rapidly over there and companies are going forward towards filing them. So yeah, and China is acquiring companies right, left and center also for agriculture, majorly agriculture and pharmaceuticals.
Who's acquiring companies?
China is acquiring companies on these sites like agro companies and also smaller companies over there. So bigger companies are acquiring smaller companies to come up with better drugs, I would say.
Any other questions for the group?
Do you guys do like a breakdown of how you thought they should proceed, like percent of allocate to innovative to generic?
I have not. So I have the statistics of how it is. Teva is lacking in terms of the R&D expenditure they are doing in total. I don't know about the by segment, but they're lacking. I think they were down by 2%, and they'll be down by 5 or 7% by 2020. But and whereas all the other all the complete industry is moving towards more R&D expenditure. The reason being, again, biologics and biosimilars, that's proteins, usually body proteins. To make that takes 5 times the amount of money, I would say, just hypothetically, to then a generic. So yeah, that is why R&D expenditures are increasing in total, but I don't know by breakdown.
So let's say I'm one of the big pharmas and I have the money to acquire a lot of small companies that produce generic drugs, right? And I buy a lot of companies in all the emerging markets. And therefore I'm able to utilize that 180-day utility exclusive period. So how does Teva fight back in that situation?
You guys?
Wait, sorry.
Yeah, I still didn't get the question.
So let's say I'm one of the big pharmas and I have the money and the power and the resources to acquire all the small generic companies in all the emerging markets, right? So by doing that, I gain the advantage of that 180 days exclusivity period. So where I can put drugs from those small companies, and I'm competing with myself. Instead of doing the, what is the word for double monopoly? It has,
Oh, you're talking about like in the article it talked about the authorized
yeah, so
authorized generics, like the big companies have their own, small companies
Exactly.
producing their own.
I think the 180-day period, again, sorry if I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I understand the 180 period is only for one company.
yes.
One company has to get approved, so they may acquire 50 smaller companies, but does not matter if there's someone before them in line for that 180-day
If I make
period.
sure that one of those 50 companies is first in line and then we get approved.
So that's going to help them, for sure. And Teva, the big pharma also, but what happens is while acquiring, the cost of acquisition goes up. So the cost there for that particular generic product is high. So if they want to undercut companies like Teva, they have to take a huge hit on because they've spent that money for that one drug.
But for those 6 months,
Yeah.
there will be no competition, right?
But there'll still be people, big acceptance is low because people are still buying generic. Emerging markets, as I said, people are still brand freaks. They don't want to buy generics. They produce generics, but they're still brand freaks. Doctors don't want to give generics because the margin they get on a generic drug is really low. So they still want to go for these big companies. So if that is why, and again, product hopping. So big companies can keep pushing these guys out. Even if it gets approved, doctors still want to sell only brands rather than generics, because in emerging markets, there's a concept that generic is low quality.
Brands are produced by big pharma, right?
Brands are produced by big pharma. So big
And I'm
pharma.
one of the big pharmas. I'm
Yeah.
acquiring a small company which produces generic. And I make sure that those are the first people to get in line and get approved by ANDA and all that stuff. So how does Teva, for those 6 months, there's no competition. There's me with innovator drug and my small company that is owned by me. So how does Teva fight back that plaque?
Teva, I just know undercut. That's the only way to be good in an emerging market, because if Pfizer acquires, right, if it comes to be a Pfizer brand name, right, I don't think that people are going to go buy Teva. They'll still buy Pfizer. So Teva is again at loss over there.
And they have a 6 month lag too.
There's a 6 month lag. But after that, if Teva is 6 months early, it's first mover's advantage. If Teva is into the market 6 months early, as soon as the big pharma is out, then they can fight back as much as they want to, because the prices will start going down drastically, which is costly for big pharmas to do.
And I think especially now that Teva is such a large generics pharmaceutical company, even if they have those 6 months, they still, Teva, once they get in, they could like undercut by so much that it's actually no longer profitable
Yeah.
for the big pharma to have acquired this company. And then it'll give them they'll have to think twice about acquiring it if they because technically they'll only have profit for that short period, and then Teva will just undercut them until they lose.
And again, that's again
Can I limit your responses one per person?
Oh, sorry.
So we can get all the questions, because it's quite
Yes, sorry.
You guys can move on. Fine.
You had a question, right?
Yeah. Do you think Teva should continue doing, focusing on the generics market, or should enter biosimilars or innovatives? Or do you think it's going to stagnate because of it's already grown, almost the biggest market in US, and if they are not going to get good share using generics in the emerging markets, do you think they should focus on biosimilars?
They're already in the biosimilar and innovative market.
Yeah, but that's like a very tiny portion. Their major focus is still the generics market. Do you think it's going to stagnate because it's not?
I'm biased towards biosimilars and biologics. Being in that field, I know how important those things are. So I would want a company to do that rather than being on the generic side of things, because I am not happy when I buy a generic medicine. It's psychologically, I don't like it. So I always go for someone who's a brand name company, even if their patents are expired. That's my personal bias towards it. So I think that if the industry is growing at a rate of 60% consolidated year by year, I would rather do biosimilars. And Teva has the money to do it. Why not do it then?
Yeah, I agree with that also, because in nowadays generic pharmaceutical is very crowded, and they have to fight with infringement suit or something like that to maintain the company. And I think biosimilar is better than generic pharmaceutical.
Since they're doing low cost, do you think that they have to keep expanding to survive, like as part of their culture? And if they stop, could they survive?
I understand they need to expand their pipeline. Geographically, I don't know if they should do it, but if they don't do it, but still have to expand their pipeline because diseases are changing on a very rapid rate. So they need to advance their pipelines to be in competition. If they don't, then somebody else is going to come in and take all their market share away.
So they just have to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, because there was tuberculosis was a normal disease. Then there was resistant tuberculosis, there are multi-drug resistant, and there's no treatment for tuberculosis. Right? So if they don't expand, if a company says, okay, I'm done, and somebody else finds a drug, finds anything for a multi-resistant TB, then yeah, Teva is out for the month.
So looking at a broader picture, either choosing a generic or being innovative is different from moving to a different geographical market. So how do you weigh that? Like, what would you do if you were the management of Teva? Would you try to be a market leader in generics or innovator, or expand your market?
I can do both.
I mean,
I think I can do both, because if I can still be a market leader if I do innovation, right? If I go to another market with my innovative product, it's innovative there as well. So if there's no one else for that 6 or 7 year period I can enjoy, then I'm still going to be the highest market share in that particular drug segment. If it is generic, they still have to fight it out. They have to fight out really bad.
okay.
So
So Teva was already like having trouble with like allocating resources for generic and for innovator at the same time. So like, how do they can they still afford to expand to the new markets?
I think they can. They're 9% market share in generics, highest till now. Good profit margins year by year, and they should. If they don't, then they'll die. They'll tank really fast. Because I think biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical market is really cutthroat. It's innovation. It's not 18-month innovation. It's daily innovation. So if they don't, then they can have special more acquisitions and joint ventures. Like they have a lot of ventures with Roche now or Glaxo. So they can say, okay, I'll give you my product, and then you can move forward and make it. So that allows them to cut a lot of taxes as well. They do it mainly for taxes and also patent sharing.
Yeah, I agree, because for the biosimilars, when we produce our products, the price of that one is more higher than the generic one. So when it is buy, it can offset for the generic.
Okay.
So if you make a SWOT analysis for Teva Pharmaceutical, what are the weaknesses of this company? What do you think they should improve?
The weakest part of the company?
Yes, the weakest part in the company. What is the part that they should improve, work more on? So
I think, for my opinion, I think that patent, because the companies continue to make patent infringement suits, and as I do some research, it affects a lot for the company share. Yes, and if they continue to do that, one part is that, so if they market the generic version of the branded products, so if the patent is pending, they have to stop the sales of that product. So it's also affect the revenues.
I think they're not heavy into biologics again. R&D in biologics is needed to fight against diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, because their biggest market is neurodegenerative diseases. So if they don't fight and don't develop biologics over there, generics are not going to work. They just don't work for that disease. So if there are a lot of people coming up, so yeah, I think they'll be better off if they go ahead for biologics.
So just piggybacking on some of the questions that came up, right? I mean, so you're suggesting, correct me if I'm wrong, you're suggesting we need more R&D on innovative products, not the generic products, and we still need the expansion into, what type of markets are we talking about? Emerging markets, developed nation markets, pharma-driven, physician-driven? What are we talking about here?
Emerging markets and physician-driven.
Okay, so if I was to stick a timeline in terms of what do we do first, or where do we put our resources as a CEO of the company, how do you look at this from a timeline perspective? What's a short-term goal, what's a long-term goal?
I think the short-term goal, if they continued the way Hurwitz did, what he did was focus on specific markets that had a lot of potential. So he started off with US because it was clearly the largest. And if you're going to expand into the emerging markets, like say India, it'd probably be best to just focus on India's market first and then develop your infrastructure there before expanding too fast.
I think the first thing they need to do is get into biosimilars in the markets they are, short term. If they can file their ANDAs before anyone else. So first fight it out over there on the home front, and on the back end have try to find joint ventures in India first, like Biocon, because they need API for all of these. They need all their active pharmaceutical ingredients for any of their biosimilars. If they have a joint venture with Lupin, again a big generic or a biosimilar company in India, if they can find these joint ventures, and then slowly after 5 years they should start tapping in when the market is still trying to adapt to the new diseases which are coming on.
Can you go back to the slide that you had, the 5?
This one?
Yeah. Prior to that, the one that says about the 5 problems, or
This one?
sort of the 5?
Okay, which knee had? This one.
So, okay. So continuity of consolidations, right?
Yes.
What type of consolidations are we referring to here?
The merging and the acquisition.
Okay, did you guys identify any particular acquisitions that Teva should immediately get into?
Immediately get into.
Kind.
I think now there are some restriction in Europe, like Germany or something, because they have some restriction. They enter the Europe, but it's just some particular places.
Okay.
So yeah, I think they should expand a little bit more because its competitor is Solvatis, right?
Which one?
Solvatis, right?
I don't know.
Its competition is already in that market, in Germany. So if they can compete them, it's a bit better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't unplug your computer in our discussion, we'll come back to this one. There's another question in terms of, where's that slide where you had the countries identified for the biosimilars? So this is by market share, or this is approved drug pipeline as well?
Approved drug pipeline.
Okay. South Korea, Mexico, Russia, Brazil, India, all of those being emerging markets, some being Asia, some being non-Asia. Japan, EU, and US.
China was missing because I did not have a number.
Okay. And what is the source of this data?
Deloitte.
All right. I think we'll end the presentation in this one. We'll continue as a discussion so Zach can leave as well. Thank you, Zach.